Namaste and hello there. My name is Abhijit. This is third session of SQL Server Administration series. In the last session, we have seen history of SQL language, evolution of SQL Server, different versions and editions of SQL Server with its licensing and pricing, that is cost of SQL Server. Today, we are going to install SQL Server 2016 Evaluation Edition. We already have seen that SQL Server Enterprise Developer and Evaluation Editions have same features, the only difference is their usability. Enterprise Edition is licensed copy of SQL Server which is used in production systems. Developer Edition is free edition which is used only for development purpose. Evaluation Edition is also free edition with 6 months trial period. After 6 months from the day of installation, it will automatically stop working. Today, we will see prerequisite to install any version of SQL Server and installation of Evaluation Edition of SQL Server 2016. Single video for both topics would be long, so I have divided into two parts. In this part, we will discuss prerequisite, and in the next part, we will see installation of SQL Server. So let's get started. Before starting actual installation, it is very important to understand prerequisite to install SQL Server. Now, SQL Server is nothing but an exe, that is an executable program installed on Windows operating system. SQL Server is a member of .NET product family of Microsoft, that is, it is built on top of .NET framework. It comes with operating system of its own to maintain databases, so it is called server. Prerequisites are divided into two parts, hardware requirements and software requirements. Hardware requirements focuses on three parts, hard disk, memory and processor. SQL Server requires a minimum 6 GB of available hard disk space. Disk space requirements will vary with SQL Server components you install. So, disk will occupy the space only for components you install within SQL Server. If you install all the components, then it will occupy up to 6 GB of disk space. Memory, minimum 1 GB and recommended 4 GB to ensure optimal performance. It will be very difficult to run SQL Server on 1 GB of RAM. For optimum performance, we should have at least 4 GB of RAM. But you can install and use SQL Server on systems having less than 4 GB of RAM. No worries. Processor, 32 or 64 bit, but recommended is 64 bit because it is latest technology. We have already covered 32 bit and 64 bit processors with differences between them in detail in the last session. Moving to software requirements. It focuses on three components: .NET Framework, Network Protocols and Operating System. .NET Framework. SQL Server Setup automatically installs .NET Framework, but you can manually install it before installing SQL Server. You will need to verify which .NET Framework is needed to install SQL Server of your choice. .NET Framework is a mediator between operating system and SQL Server or any web application and SQL Server. As we know, SQL Server is a product of Microsoft's .NET family. So to function SQL Server, we need .NET Framework installed on our computer. Different SQL versions require different .NET frameworks as both products develop simultaneously and SQL Server tries to use latest .NET framework in the latest versions. SQL Server automatically installs required .NET framework if it is not available already on our system. Network protocols. SQL Server supported operating systems have built-in network protocols. Shared memory, named pipes and TCP/IP are examples of network protocol. As we know, SQL Server is a client-server architecture, so it needs to communicate with different systems over a network. For example, you connect SQL Server through SSMS from your computer, but SQL Server actually is not installed on your computer. It is installed on some remote computer in some data center, but still you are able to connect it through SSMS tool, that is called client-server architecture. Your computer is client and you are accessing SQL Server installed on remote computer. So to make this communication happen, SQL Server uses three network protocols. These three protocols are already installed on Windows operating system which supports SQL Server installation. So shared memory protocol is used when SQL Server and SSMS are installed on same machine. This protocol is used when there is no network dependency. Named pipes protocol. This protocol is used for LAN, that is local area network. Let's say SQL Server is installed in one of the system in your office and client, that is SSMS, is installed on another system in your office and both are connected through LAN network. Then named pipes protocol is used by SQL Server for communication. TCP/IP, that is transmission control protocol or internet protocol, is used for WAN, that is wide area network. Suppose you are sitting in your office in India and accessing SQL Server installed in any of US data center. So to communicate from India to US data center, SQL Server uses TCP/IP protocol. Operating system. You need to check on Microsoft portal if your OS supports SQL Server being installed on your machine. So, not every Windows operating system supports every SQL Server because older versions of every software do not support new versions of dependent software. We must check on Microsoft portal if your operating system supports version of SQL Server you are installing. Just for your info, SQL Server was a platform dependent software until SQL Server 2017 because before SQL Server 2017 all versions of SQL Server was released to work on only Windows operating systems. But since 2017, SQL Server can be installed on Windows and Linux, both operating systems. So this is all for today. In the next session, we will see step-by-step installation of Microsoft SQL Server 2016 because 2016 known to be the most stable SQL Server as on today. Till then, stay happy, stay blessed, keep learning and take care.